my first birth was scary, emotional. I didn't know what to expect. Pretty long. So my first labour was 19 hours I was in labour for. It was just really scary.
So the birth of my first child went for 26, 27 hours of labour pain, contractions, and then during his birth, instead of tearing backwards, I tore forward, so they had to get a specialist to come in and to stitch my clitoris back together, so in future I would have the ability to enjoy sex. It was really painful, really long, draining.
The birth was scary, but very beautiful to see my child born. But scary because a lot of stuff happens during birth for your partner, or for Nara in that case. Blood, pain, it's pretty full on.
The birth was pretty intense. Lots of screaming, lots of yelling, and then lots of blood. Like, the best way to describe would be like a really bad horror movie. And I'm amazed that that area actually gets back to normal after.
I put on 5 kilos when I was pregnant, so to get that off was a lot of hard work, and it took me a good year or so to get back to normal, to feel a bit normal.
I was only 19 when I fell pregnant with my son, and I was quite a athletic and sporty person, so I actually had a six-pack back in the day, and because I got so big, I tore my stomach muscles apart. It was the width of your hand, and the only way for them to fix it, to stop me from having lower back pain now that I'm older, and to have better core strength, is to cut you open, stitch your muscles back together, and then stitch you back together. So they basically cut top to bottom. So we opted out for that. But I got lots of stretch marks, gained a fair bit of weight. That took a long time to lose, and definitely never regained the perkiness of being a young woman with your boobs and your abs and your stomach. So bikinis became non-existent for me in the future. So I still don't wear bikinis because of what toll it took on me at such a young age.
There's 4 types of tears. There's a first degree, which is just the skin, a second degree, which is the skin and the muscle, a third degree, which is the skin, the muscle, and some anal sphincter involvement, and a fourth degree, which is A to B, complete tear, that obviously involves the bowel lining. So with a fourth degree and even a third degree, you will need to have surgery to repair that. With a fourth degree, some women actually have to have a stoma bag, which is a bag that sits on the outside of the body and collects the poo that way. So you have to have surgery to obviously have that happen. Some women just have that for a certain amount of time until they recuperate, and some women unfortunately need to have that for the rest of their lives. Once a woman does have a severe tear, subsequently, if they choose to have another baby after that, they would normally have a cesarean section, which cuts through 7 different layers. The other thing that I was going to quickly discuss with you is postpartum hemorrhage. So postpartum hemorrhage is a bleed after birth that is at least 500 mils or more. So some women unfortunately bleed quite a lot after birth, and that can require blood transfusion or an iron transfusion. Some women actually have to go to intensive care because they've lost that much blood. And I've actually seen a woman lose 2.5 litres of blood, which is really scary.
I also suffered lots of really bad lower back pains, and my kidneys actually started to shut down. So I used to have to go in weekly for ultrasounds and massages to keep my kidneys functioning. So there was a lot of appointments, a lot of painful nights, and when you're pregnant you can't take many drugs, so pain relief was reliant on heat packs. So the toll that it took on my body was quite huge, and lasting. So even now, doing a sit-up, push-up or a plank, chronic back pain on a regular basis because I have no core due to the damage that was done.
It'd be great if I could borrow some sleep. Still really tired now, and my son's 14 months old, and yeah, some nights he'll just wake up randomly, just screaming the house down, sometimes 3-4 times a night. But the first 6 weeks are probably the worst. He's barely sleeping. You're waking up at like 4 a.m. for hours on end, and the whole time you're just absolutely drained. But you've just got to keep getting up, unfortunately.
So my son was a really bad sleeper. He did not sleep through soundly until he started school. So it was 5 years of sleep deprivation for me. And because he was such a young, like when he was young, he was so sick. We actually had many nights of sleepless nights, emergency appointments at 2 a.m. because he was struggling to breathe. You didn't have the ability to go out for a party because the next day you knew you had to get up to a child, and there was no chance to have a nap or a sleep because during the day he napped the same as if it was at night time. He might be asleep for an hour and then be up for 3-4 hours playing all through the first 5 years of his life.
So I struggled a lot with sleep because my firstborn baby didn't sleep, so he cried a lot and was awake. Like, he would only have cat naps of less than an hour. So I would say I was probably a good zombie for the first year, and I struggled a lot with that, just with no sleep, like mental health wise, and yeah, I just felt like I wasn't there half the time, and just every day was the same, and just trying to get some sleep when I could, but yeah, I struggled hard.
You're going to miss out on a lot of sleep for a while when you have children. Waking up multiple times, 3, 4, 5 times a night for bottles, and even if they're just not sleeping well, it can be very stressful, spending hours just trying to put them back to sleep. Also, it can be very frustrating when you just put them to sleep and you go lay down, and about 5 minutes later you just hear the crying because they've woken up again, and it's just back up another couple of hours.
So my son was a really sick baby. We had lots of medical appointments. So the cost added up really quickly. Trips to Melbourne, chronic antibiotics all the time. He was such a sick kid, so it really costed a lot and added up. Being a young mum, income was low, but most of my expenses were on the cost of Liam, and medically it was quite high, and really impacted my ability to then party and do anything because the money had to go onto Liam and his medical bills. And
well, it changes as they get older, I guess. You got to start buying more and less. So at the moment we spend anywhere from $200 on shopping and clothes and food and nappies, but it can range more and less depending on formula and nappies that you're on. Yeah, it can be quite expensive.
Babies are poo machines. They poo constantly 6+ times during the day, let alone at night time. I remember some of the worst experiences getting out to go grocery shopping, and you'd go to pull Liam out of the car seat and there was an explosion everywhere. So not only the car seat, back of the clothes, seat belt. So basically you just had to turn around and go home.
If you don't like shit on your fingers, I wouldn't recommend. And yeah, that's about it. Imagine having to change a nappy full of shit. It stinks. They move. You gotta try and keep their hands out of it. You gotta keep your hands out of it. They can fart and get shit on you. It's not the best.
So nappy changing, that was all me. My husband would not change nappies, so I struggled with that. That was nappy changing time was always me, which was also hard. My husband worked nights, so then he would have to sleep during the day, so I did majority of all the nappy change.
Having a child costs a lot. There's lots of things that you need. There's lots of things you buy that you don't need. But once you have a child, you spend more on them than on yourself.
There's quite a lot to it. You've got to think about clothes, nappies, formula, a bed, drawers. To decorate a room, you might want decorations, and it's all a pram. It's all very expensive. My pram that I got for my child was $1,000 alone, so very expensive. And it gets more expensive as they get older. Just more clothes, more shoes, more everything that they want.
Startup costs. Pram $610 to $1,499. Car seat $329 to $699. A bassinet $99 to $699. A cot $1,000 to $1,500. Change table $250. High chair $250. Baby monitor $300. Baby clothes $300. Average startup cost of $3,500. Do you have a spare $3,500 laying around?
So I was lucky when we had our firstborn baby, because there was a government grant that you'd be given out. So the government would give you $5,000 from memory. So that helped buy the baby crib, the pram, everything now. But I believe you don't get that now, so that would be a struggle as well.
I was 30 when I had my first child, and yet it stops a lot of things on the weekend. You find yourself not being able to go out and party as much as what you used to, and yeah, it can be really, really annoying.
I was 19 when I fell pregnant with Liam. He was 9 months old at my 21st. So while all my friends were having 21 birthday parties, I was up breastfeeding and up for different reasons. I wasn't out partying and enjoying everyone celebrating turning 21. I was at home with a child or in a hospital because he was sick. While all my friends were at O Week celebrating going to uni and having a great time, I was in hospital giving birth to my son. So it really changed my social life and really impacted on friendships because none of my friends were having children. So it was quite isolating and lonely. A lot of my friends then became older. So I found it hard to probably fit in because I was 19, 20 in the birthing classes and in mums groups, and all these other women were in their 30s. So it was quite lonely being a young mum.
I was only just turned 18 at the time, and it changed everything pretty drastically as 18, trying to still find my way, trying to go out and party and make friends, and it all just kind of went to a stop. None of that was able to happen with a young one in the world. At times it can be full on, and you think about how life was different.
So my relationship with my son's dad was quite hard. Even though he was 6 years older than me, he wasn't around a lot. He would still go to the pubs and I'd be stuck at home with the kid. So there was lots of fights around that, and because of the amount of money he was spending on beer and going out, we used to fight over money because money was tight, me not being able to work and him working and feeling that that was his money, he could spend it how he wanted. So it caused lots of conflict, and for him it was probably more babysitting when he did decide to have his son and look after him, so I could go shopping or have a nap or just even have a shower and wash my hair. So our relationship really changed and ended when Liam was 9 months old because of the pressures that came with having a kid.
It has, and I think it happens with everyone's relationships with a baby, is you got to take more time off each other and more onto the child. And it can be very stressful for each parent in their own way. Mothers waking up and breastfeeding and changing nappies a lot while father's at work, strenuous on both ends. And you've both got to put a massive effort of work to make it work.
Having a baby definitely affects your relationship with your partner. Due to being tired, not having time just to be alone. You definitely lose all your free time. There's no such thing as time for yourself. There's no such thing as like any personal time. You know, they're there all the time. They've got to be looked after all the time. So, yeah, just to do something, you have to look for a babysitter or pay for daycare. And if you can't afford that, well, you've got them 24/7. So, yeah, it's definitely a struggle.
After you have a child, you basically have no free time at all. You really need to schedule all your things in that you want to do for the day, as there's just not much time to do anything. So I would really recommend before you have kids, enjoy as much free time as you can, because you don't actually realise how much free time you have until you've got a child and you then have none.
After you have a child, there's no you time anymore. It's all about the baby. And then as they get older and they start going to school, it still becomes less about you and more about them. They've got their friends, they've got their birthday parties. It's really hard to find mum time or me time. Going to the hairdressers isn't easy. There's no free time. And then when there is free time, you're so sleep deprived and tired that you just want to nap. So life drastically changes. You can't think about yourself. It is all about them.
You get very tired over times, and it gets you very stressful, and you can get very annoyed by it and angry, and just slow days sometimes get even slower just because you feel like you're cleaning up and getting up 1,000 times in 10 minutes. Yeah, it's very strenuous.
It's impossible. It's so hard. You're so tired. All you want to do is sleep, or you're feeling seedy and sick, and you've got a child who wants attention, who needs attention, or they vomit, or there's a poo explosion and there's poo everywhere and you're gagging. You're struggling to keep what you ate and drank down.
To tell you the truth, I stopped drinking when I had kids, because having a hangover is one thing, but having a hangover and looking after a baby, it's a nightmare. So to be honest, I don't drink. Even though they're teenagers now, I still don't drink. It's hard work.
Just imagine a hangover and then someone screaming in your ear for the whole day and demanding things and asking to do things, and it's not the best fun in the world. There's not much to do about it either. Hangover, you just lay in bed and get over it, not with a kid. So have fun.
It's not great at all. You feel like throwing up anyway, but then when you go change a nappy, it's pretty likely to happen, as it just absolutely stinks and makes the situation a lot worse. And you can't think you'll sleep off a hangover, because the baby would just wake up early in the morning and just stay awake all day, and you have to be there to look after your child.
I love my son, but if I had a chance to redo life, I would have chosen a better man to have a child to, because I am now stuck with this man in my life for the rest of my son's life. And co-parenting is tricky when you believe in different values. And it was really hard and financially hard. At 19, there was no more night clubbing. There's no more going out drinking with your friends, because you're pregnant, you're fat, you're nauseous, you feel sick. So I definitely would wait till later in life and make sure that person I want to have that child with is the person I could see myself growing old with. And at 19, my decision on men was not the same as what it is now. So making sure you're making that right choice and that they are going to be a good dad, because that's really important, that child needs a positive role model and someone that will support you, because it's emotionally and physically draining being pregnant and being a parent. And if they're not going to be there 100%, then they're not the right person that you should be having a child with.
Probably would wait to have a kid. Too young. I do love him and I love having him every day. But I think you should wait until you're more stable and you've got your life ready and you've enjoyed your childhood. For people young that want a baby, wait, you're still a baby yourself. It's probably best to have fun and enjoy your life before you bring another life into this world and there's no more time for you.
Having a kid truly is a remarkable experience. However, if you are under the age of 25, I certainly wouldn't recommend it, as drinking on the weekends and partying will definitely come to a stop. Even just hanging out with mates and your free time in general will just disappear, which it is unfortunate to say, but that's just what happens. So if you were thinking of going overseas on a trip when you were 20, and if you have a kid, it's generally not going to happen. So